And welcome into the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeart Radio app. My name is Rob Sanders. Thanks for joining us today. I tell you what, man, got a jam-packed show for you. Yes. What are we going to get into today? Oh, well, how about what the Big 12 is going to do now that Texas and Oklahoma have pretty much said, yeah, we're out. I want to get your thoughts on this immediately at 803-978-1832 as we get rolling here on the rundown this afternoon. You know, there's reports that maybe Clemson would be in the mix along with Florida State. Yeah. It's crazy. Maybe Ohio State and Michigan, maybe having a 20-team super conference. Of course, that is from Outkick. And I posted that on my blog page, which you should be following, by the way. It's at foxsportsradio1400.com. Be sure to check that out. And what's going to be the next domino to fall? We had the first one with Texas and Oklahoma saying, you know what? We're out of the Big 12. We're out of the Big 12. So there's that. Also in the mix today, according to ESPN, the Big 10 has decided that they are going to look at some other options. Yeah. Hold on, let me give you the information on that really quick here as we roll along here. They're considering certain teams for expansion. Notre Dame, according to ESPN's Adam Rittenberg, is in the mix, along with Cal, Washington, Colorado, Southern Cal, UCLA, Oregon, and Stanford. So all of those teams are theoretically in the mix. So is that going to be the next straw to drop here? Are we going to get to a point where we have, I look at it from this perspective. The next step for the Oklahoma and Texas is, according to several reports, they have to have 11 of the 14 presidents or chancellors from the SEC schools to approve them, so they can be extended an invitation to the SEC. Now, I don't think that they're going to, I think that's already done, in my opinion. I doubt they were going to leave the Big 12 without having a safety net there. Now, I also think, and this is just from my perspective, no one wants to be the lame duck team here. And what I mean by that is that their conference stuff is set to go out in 2025. And with that, I think that they're going to get out of that, meaning that I think that next season, in 2022, Texas and Oklahoma will be part of the SEC. Now, I think there's a lot of vibe out there that geographically it doesn't make sense. What I've learned with this is that you can't look at it by geographics anymore because that doesn't matter. I know that sounds kind of silly, but that's just the way that it is. The geographics don't matter anymore. Now, I think there's things that have to be ironed out, like travel, etc. I mean, that's just the way that it is. But I don't think that it's going to last until 2025. I think that's just silly. I think that they'll pay to get out. And especially, Texas, according to Forbes, is like the most valuable athletic program in the country. They laugh at your exit fee from the Big 12. Now, there's reports that the Big 12 was going to offer Texas and Oklahoma a 1.5 share of the TV revenue. So they would get 1 share and a half share compared to everybody else getting 1 share. If I am TCU, Baylor, all of these other schools, maybe they're thinking that so that they can continue the Big 12. But if I'm looking at the commissioner of the Big 12 and I'm saying, what the hell are you doing? You're going to give them 1.5? That's insane. I think it's a last-ditch effort, and obviously it's not enough. It's not enough. So you're going to have Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC. It's going to happen quickly here. Now, will the SEC move and have 4 other teams and do 20? If I'm the SEC and going by the report from Outkick the Coverage, and if I can get Clemson, Florida State, Ohio State, and Michigan, if I can get those 4 teams in addition to Texas and Oklahoma, I'm going to do it. Because when I go in front of the ESPN folks, I can look at them and say, hey, outside of our conference, tell us who has the capability of winning a national title. I'll wait as far as on the football front. And it's going to be all about football. All about football. That's the number one thing here. I was at ACC kickoff last week. Commissioner Phillips said, football is going to be our number one priority, 24/7, 365. Commissioner Phillips, I hate to break this to you, sir, but if you lose Clemson and Florida State, you are the AAC. That is what you are. Yes, you'll still be a basketball conference with North Carolina and Duke, and you'll still have that. But the reality is that you will essentially be the AAC. Call me up if you want to respond. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. Jerome online says they should get NC schools instead. Yeah, I can see that. But on the football front, if you had the chance to get Florida State and Clemson, and you're at the SEC office, and you could see there's going to be a monumental shift anyway because of what has happened on the front of what Texas and Oklahoma have done. If you have the opportunity to be a 20-team conference, regardless of what conference you're in, if you can get those 4 teams, you do it. 803-978-1832 is the number to call. Let's go out to the phones. And good afternoon. Welcome to the Rundown.
Hey, Rob.
What's up, buddy?
I just don't see Clemson leaving the ACC.
I don't think that they'll have a choice.
I don't think they'll leave it. I think there's just too much loyalty there, and I would never see Ohio State and Michigan lead Big Ten.
I mean, money talks, sir. I mean, I know that sounds silly, but it may come down to the money.
Ohio State, Michigan already have the money. You know, Texas already has the money. They don't have to leave the Big 12.
I don't. That's one thing. I don't really understand Texas leaving the Big 12 because the conference did whatever Texas wanted them to do anyway.
Yeah, I mean they
couldn't win. I don't get that at all. And that's the other thing too. There's a lot of folks that are, especially from the Texas and Oklahoma front, they think they're going to go into the conference, into the SEC, and they're going to be fine. They also think that there's a set of SEC teams that are somewhat intimidated by Texas and Oklahoma joining that conference. Let me break it down for you really quick here. The folks at Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Georgia, and down in Gainesville, they're not intimidated by you at all. So let's make sure that I think Texas and Oklahoma fans need to understand that.
Well, I think that depends on, is Texas in the East or is Texas in the West? I don't think LSU wants to be stuck in the same side as Oklahoma.
Well, I think that in the grand scheme of things, when they do realignment, it makes sense to move Alabama and Auburn to the East, put Texas and Oklahoma in the West, and then go from there. But Missouri should probably be in the West too. But yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how they're going to do all of that, but it makes sense to put Alabama and Auburn in the East, and then keep the Iron Bowl rivalry going there. And then go from there. So,
but if I'm Georgia and Florida, I don't want Alabama in the East.
Well, but you know what? In the grand scheme of things, if it comes down to having the capability to have that 20-team setup, if you get the other ones in your conference. Now, if we're just talking about Texas and Oklahoma, you know, if you're Georgia, you want them to play in the East because that keeps the East as easy as it always has been, especially right now. But in the end, though, something's going to have to change on the other side from some teams going from the West to the East, or maybe Mizzou moving from the East to the West. But so many interesting things to talk about when it comes to that.
How about Cincinnati to the ACC and Oklahoma State.
I think in the end, I think what's going to happen with the ACC, if Clemson and Florida State stay, I think Notre Dame is finally going to get off their butt and they're going to join the conference. And West Virginia, I think, will be the other team. It just makes sense as far as being in that ACC blue footprint there, and adding Notre Dame beyond makes sense because they're in all the other sports anyway. So,
do you think do you think adding Cincinnati would help?
No.
I mean, Notre Dame
opinion,
and West Virginia, if you said, look, we're going to add 4 teams.
Well, if the ACC were going to add 4 teams, I would go with. I like West Virginia. I also like Notre Dame, but the other 2 could be up for debate. You could go with. I like the idea of Oklahoma State because they're going to be the team from the Big 12, and then maybe you go into Texas and get Baylor. I mean, I know that sounds a little bit out there,
TCU.
Or TCU or Baylor. I think Baylor's the bigger get, though, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd want to get into that Texas market, but I don't know. I don't see what Cincinnati brings to one of the quote unquote Power Fives, which may end up being the Power 4. So, but
I mean, if Luke Fickell can keep them going like they're going, it's going to be a big get for somebody.
Let's be honest. I mean, he is he's a guy that's probably looking for his next gig. You can't base bringing someone into your conference just based on one football coach.
Yeah.
So
how about Central Florida? You think they could?
Central Florida is one of the biggest universities as far as enrollment in Florida. So that would make sense. But then in my opinion, you're kind of Florida heavy. I mean, I don't know if Miami and Florida State would be like, hey, that sounds, let's put them into the mix. I don't know if they would approve that or not, to be honest with you. I mean, it's all like throwing spaghetti at the wall right now, but
yeah. Well, some teams are going to have to start jumping ship pretty quick.
I think it's going to I think this week is going to be the busiest week in July that we've ever seen as far as the college football front. Today, we've just had where the 2 alpha dogs from Texas are 2 alpha dogs from the Big 12 have basically told the Big 12, we don't want to be here anymore and we want to go somewhere else. And it's not just going to end with just those 2. Something else has to happen. And what's the next domino going to be?
What do you think about the new ACC commissioner? Isn't he from Notre Dame?
Oh, goodness. Dr. Jim Phillips, I think, is from – I have to look it up, brother. If you didn't ask me, I could have told you.
I thought he was from Notre Dame.
Yeah, I have to look
All
it
right.
up. Yeah.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That is the number to call if you'd like to join us here on The Rundown, right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400, around the world on the iHeartRadio app. SCU says just get rid of all conferences. Okay. I don't know how you would pitch that as far as TV money. Tom online says Rob going to be the first person talking about how much harder the SEC is if Clemson gets in, though, and those conference championships dry up. First of all, Tom, if you think that Clemson cannot go into the SEC and win the conference, you don't know much about the game of hut-hut. I mean, there are 3 teams in the SEC right now I think can go toe-to-toe with Clemson and win. Georgia, even though they're handicapped by a coach that I think is just not that good, as far as talent goes, it's right there with them. LSU, because of the talent that they have, and Alabama. Those 3 teams can beat Clemson. The rest of the teams in the SEC, I think Clemson could win by double digits with the exception of Texas A&M. If you don't believe that, just look at the talent Clemson has. There just seems to be like this complex where people think that Clemson can't compete in the SEC. It's just silly. Silly. I think the 3 teams that can beat Clemson up there, and by the way, Clemson will give them all games. I mean, they're favored over Georgia anyway. I'm talking about just for players, the players that they have right now. Georgia, LSU, and Alabama. The rest of them, you're going to have to tell me, hey, this is how they're going to beat them. Just saying. Now, the rest of the conference for the ACC, hey, man, I'll give you that. I mean, I guess North Carolina, they matched up pretty well with Texas A&M last year. I think North Carolina this year would probably go 4-4, 5-3 in the conference, depending upon which side of the SEC they were on. But to say that, oh, Clemson won't compete and the conference championships will dry up, I'm not buying that, man. Not buying that at all. Tom with another point. There are no teams that can beat Clemson in the ACC. That you may be right about that. The gap with Clemson is huge. The media picks came out yesterday, or actually came out this morning. Clemson got there was 147 people that voted. 125 of them, including myself, voted for Clemson to win the conference. So that I won't argue with you about. 803-978-1832. Blake says, imagine Clemson quarterback trying to get off play calls in front of 55,000 cowbells. Nobody else really has a problem with it. People go in and win at Mississippi State all the time. Just saying. I mean, I don't get all that. Clemson went into Texas A&M and won. Went into Auburn and won. I mean, you think those environments aren't nearly as good as Mississippi State? Tom with another fine point online. Not to mention the NFL draft is pretty much owned by SEC players as well. You're right about that. There are a ton of SEC players that get drafted. I'll give you that too. But to make the notion that Clemson won't compete in the SEC is silly. Silly, silly, silly. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. Brock with some knowledge here. Anybody who says Clemson can't compete in the SEC are idiots. Anybody who says Clemson would go through the SEC with ease are also idiots. I think Clemson would go through the SEC East schedule with ease. If you give Clemson a schedule where they don't have Alabama and LSU on it, I think Clemson rolls. If they're in the West, I think it's harder. If you got to go to LSU and you host Alabama, that's a tough schedule. Tough schedule. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. Randall says he's hearing Auburn and Alabama moving to the East and Texas and OU headed to the West. Yeah, once all of that comes about, you might be right, man. That may be the way that it ends up. We shall see, man. This is like almost like fantasy football when your first time playing fantasy football. This team can go here. This team can go there. Can you imagine some of the matchups just from the SEC with Texas and Oklahoma in the mix? Can you imagine a setup where if you're in the let's say that you can have a setup theoretically where you could play Alabama, Texas, and Oklahoma and LSU in back-to-back weeks. That is tough, ladies and gentlemen. That is tough. 803-978-1832. And I was thinking about this too earlier. You add Texas and Oklahoma as far as baseball teams. The SEC is a heck of a baseball conference. I think they could have 6 teams going to Omaha every year with Texas and Oklahoma joining that conference. They really, really could. So, I mean, we got to think of it from that perspective too. All right, quick break. When we come back, we'll take your calls as the phone lines are filling up. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. This is The Rundown. You are listening to Fox Sports Radio 1400. Can you imagine, though, Auburn having to go to Oklahoma? That would be cool. If you're a Gamecock fan, going to Oklahoma and playing or going to Texas and playing, I mean, that's just going to be outstanding. From a fan perspective, that's awesome. Now, if the other 4 teams get into the mix, wow. I think the ACC will stay in as far as the basketball stuff goes, but as far as football, man, I mean, I was looking at it, and if you get Ohio State and Clemson into the mix there and Florida State, like I can't remember the last national title that wouldn't be in the SEC since like Texas. Well, no, Texas is in there too. I mean, I'd have to look that up. I'm going to look that up right now. Now that I think about it, let me look that up here. Dilla Shaw last week. No, sir, I didn't. Hold on just a second. Let me look at this here. Go if the 4 teams. This is great. This is an amazing stat right here. I'm gonna save it for the 25 seconds here, but this is woof. For those who've been following along, I got my weightlifting singlet the other day. I don't look like a complete silly person in it, so I don't know if I'm gonna put pictures out or not, but it's pretty funny. Oh yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Hold on 1 second here. Check this out. Well, welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Shout out to the folks watching on Facebook, YouTube. I appreciate you guys so much for being a part of the show. It's so cool that I can actually talk with some folks that enjoy sports every day. You're welcome to join in on the phones, 803-978-1832. I was talking to them about, I got my weightlifting singlet for my competition. I think I'm August the 14th is the day that I do my weightlifting competition, where I'm trying to, I'm going to just do deadlift. I'm not going to do all 3 lifts this time, but I got my singlet, and being a chunky guy and having to wear a singlet is a challenge, but it's still going to be cool. I'm still looking forward to it. Still cutting a little bit of weight. Haven't been able to drink my trusty Red Bull. I'm drinking water. Yeah, hitting the stair climber every day, twice a day. It's a mess. Anyway, so I was thinking about this. If you get the 4 teams that we were talking about that supposedly, according to Outkick.com, that were in the mix to go to the SEC in Clemson, Michigan, Ohio State, and Florida State, in addition to Texas A&M and Oklahoma, you have to go back to 2004. So what? 16 seasons, 16 years to find a team outside of what would be the quote unquote new SEC to have a team that won a national title. Of course, that was Southern Cal, where they were cheating with Reggie Bush, etc. And then if you keep going backwards, you got to go back to 1997, where Michigan and Nebraska, I guess, split the national title. And then you had the Nebraska run there in the 90s. But you would have, in theory, every team that has won a national title, if the SEC can make that roll and pick up the 4 that the report from Outkick, the coverage, cites, that you could have every national champion since 2005 in your conference. Wrap your head around that for just a minute. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That is the number to dial if you'd like to join us here on the Rundown this afternoon, right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Randall says he thinks that OU will win the SEC before Texas will. I agree with you. But you know what else, though? I think that Texas is they're kind of hung up on, hey, you know what? We're Texas. I think there's a portion of that fan base, or a good part of it. Well, we're Texas. Don't you know who we are? When they walk into the SEC is going to look at them and be like, everybody's equal here, sir. That's kind of the vibe they're going to give you. They don't care that you're Texas. They don't care about any of that. So maybe, there's a section of me that says, maybe Texas is like, they might be biting off more than they can chew. Now, this is just on the football front. Make sure we put that out there. But you wonder if Texas is getting into a situation where they can get into a setup of, hey, we're going somewhere where we may finish 4-4 every year. What? Yeah. Think about that. If they're put into the West and they move Alabama out of it, they're still going to have to play Texas A&M. They're still going to have to play Oklahoma. They're going to have to play LSU. That's pretty tough, ladies and gentlemen. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832 is the number to dial. If you'd like to join us here on the rundown, here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. And Randall with a great point. Will they swallow their pride for the check? Yes. In the end, let's make sure we put this out there. In the end, they don't care about you. They don't care about the fans and everything else. No. It comes back down to the TV dollar and what they can generate as far as that goes. That's what it comes back down to. They don't care about your matchups here. They don't care about any of that. It's how can we make our program have the most money? That's pretty much what it boils down to. So, we can talk about how some of the matchups will be fun. Alabama having to go to Oklahoma, Texas going to Alabama. Those all sound great. All sounds great. But in the end, it's also for the bottom line. Now, one of the other things, too, is that, we've talked a little bit about maybe the G5 should have their own national championship. That may be something that might be a little more valid. Think about it for a minute. That might be something that's out there. The land of the Central Floridas and the Cincinnati and everything else. Yeah. That's something that, are they going to be valid anymore? Colby says, as a Georgia fan, I'm worried about UGA not playing Auburn every year. You know what? I think that that's it is, as he said, the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Yeah. I tell you what, there were a lot of folks that had their feelings hurt last season because you missed a lot of the ACC SEC matchups because of COVID with Georgia Tech, Louisville, Kentucky, Clemson, South Carolina, all of those games. I mean, it made the football season seem kind of hollow. It really did. So with that, are we going to be able to keep some of these matchups that are important? You mentioned that game. One of the great games to look forward to every year in SEC play is LSU and Florida. I mean, that's always a great matchup. Are we going to be able, I don't think that they'll touch the Iron Bowl, but are we going to be able to keep the Egg Bowl? Just saying. These are things that I'm sure people behind closed doors are talking about. But in the end, I mean, are we going to be able to keep those and add these new teams to the conference? We shall see. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. The questions we have out there today, if you're an SEC fan, do you want Texas and Oklahoma in your conference? I think it makes it harder for the teams that are, let's say, Kentucky, South Carolina, etc. The teams where once every 4 years or so, you were hoping that you have the capability of winning your division. Makes it harder. Makes it a lot harder. So do you want them in your conference? That's thing number one. Do you think we're going to end up losing some of these rivalry matchups? Where does Oklahoma and Texas go? Do you put them in the West, and do you move Alabama out? Move Alabama and Auburn to the East? 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That is the number to dial. Above my right shoulder, I came in, and I guess Teddy Hefner was on this morning, and he was watching the Olympics. It's like table tennis is what's on for the Olympics right now. The Japanese team, it's like doubles, a Chinese team versus a Japanese team in table tennis. We need to get Forrest Gump in the mix here so we can actually have a shot at that. Anyway, Team USA basketball yesterday looked like hot dog water as they dropped a game to France. I actually text our buddy, the guy that I think knows the most about hoops, Mr. Terrence Oglesby, the former Clemson assistant. And I asked him about it. And here is what he said. He said, I said he was actually at the Peach Jam, and he says you can't play chess with those teams. They've had their guys together since they were 15. Coach K figured it out. You have to overwhelm them and junk it up with your athletes. I think he's exactly right. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. Colby says he's a fan of women's beach volleyball. Okay. Nothing wrong with that. That's what you like. More of the rundown when we come back. This is Fox Sports Radio 1400. Hot dog water is the best analogy ever. I mean, think about it. If you're hot dog water, that's just disgusting. I should sell hot dog water or ship it out to people when they say dumb things. Hot dog water and some crayons to eat. Hot dog water keeps me from saying bad things that'll get me in trouble on the air. Man, I tell you what, the team from France yesterday, they were down a good bit throughout, and then all of a sudden they just they came back and they knocked it down. I mean, it was the Play-Doh works for you, Jerome. That's funny. I'll try to make more Play-Doh references. And Caden, for you, I'll try not to say hot dog water as much. Don't want to piss anybody off with the hot dog water reference, but I can't think of anything that's more worthless than hot dog water. I'll bet that for the Clemson, South Carolina game, Tom. Are you up for it? You're a man of conviction. You value your Gamecocks, right? They play in the mighty, mighty SEC, and they should stomp Clemson because they're an SEC team, right? I'll bet you a glass of hot dog water. You want to go there, Tom? We can do that. Let me know, Tom. Don't make bets for your team. Come on now. You might be right about that. Let me know, Tom. I think I sent Tom into hiding. I'm not picking on the 2-8 team. It's your team, sir. Your team, sir. I'll be happy to do that if you want to go on board with that. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That is the number to dial if you'd like to join me here on the rundown, here on Fox Sports Radio 1400, of course, around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Apparently, they're upset with me for using the term hot dog water over in the chat. That's some funniness right there. Anyway, if you would like to get involved with the show, what do you think about the conference expansion? We'll get into that. We can talk about that and everything else right here on the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 this afternoon. I tell you what, man, it's going to change the way a lot of things happen out there. A lot of things happen out there and the way that college football is set up. But I think it's going to be, this is the first step of many. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832 is the number to dial. If you'd like to join us here on the rundown this afternoon, Texas and Oklahoma have informed the Big 12 that they are basically out. They are out. They want to join the SEC. There are reports that the SEC might go to a 20-team conference, adding Clemson. Let's see here. Clemson, Florida State, Michigan, and Ohio State. Wow. Imagine if you're a team like, and I use Vanderbilt as an example, but you're Vanderbilt and you're expected to compete as far as financially with Ohio State, Texas. It's like, really? Wow. And you wonder if there's going to be where some teams leave a conference. I don't know. At this point, if you'd have told me last week on Monday that, hey, Texas and Oklahoma are going to be joining the SEC, I would have laughed at you. Colby says Alabama and who else would join the East? I would think it would be Auburn. Maybe Missouri joins the West, and Alabama and who else? Yeah. As my buddy Lawton Swan steps into the building, are you going to step up to the microphone or you're not, Mr. Plaid Shorts? Oh, well, Lawton Swan from Clemson Sports Talk, who will be actually in the studio today. Lawton Swan, welcome to the program.
Dearest Robert, how are you, sir?
It's great to actually see you more than twice in a year. We are talking about the various
This is way out of my contract.
I know, right? Normally, the alligators at Castle Day Swan will not allow it, but you've heard the reports that are out there that maybe that the SEC could be moving to 20 teams. Have you heard this?
Man, there's so much going on right now. It's wild. I looked at several scenarios over the weekend, just trying to piece it all together, and somehow ended up making TCU fans unhappy. So I apologize to any Horned Frogs tuning in today.
Follow Lawton at Clemson Sports, and of course, he will be here this afternoon with Clemson Sports Talk right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app, ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Brother, we had a lot of great interviews last week that we're going to be playing some of those, but I had to talk about this expansion today. I wanted to talk with I wanted to play our interview with Dino Babers and some of the great stuff we got, and it's all overshadowed by the college football world falling apart right now.
Yeah, listen, I think that when we look back, 2012 was a big year for conversations about what was going to happen with college football. I thought name, image, and likeness would be the biggest deal that we would talk about this summer, Rob, but clearly the landscape is shifting. I think we do know this. Football will continue to go on. It's pliable. It's not going to break down because of this, but man, rivalries of old could be broken up. Those are the things I think I hate to see, right. The things that we've loved watching for years. Like I remember when Oklahoma and Nebraska was a big deal, and now that's just kind of a game that's vanished from existence. And I don't want to be like Marty McFly and his family members watching some of the great things just disappearing from the picture, if you will.
Well, I completely agree with you on that. But I mean, you think back to how rivalries can go away. I remember as a kid watching Texas and Texas A&M playing every year. Now we don't have that. Could we lose the rivalry with Auburn playing Georgia every year because of this? Could we lose the Egg Bowl? I mean, there's so many things that are out there other than the Iron Bowl is not going to go away because Alabama will burn something to the ground. But you could theoretically lose a ton of these rivalry matchups due to the conference expanding.
I think Tennessee's hoping to lose their matchup with Alabama the way that's been going for the past 14 years.
Yeah, crazy stuff. I was doing the math and earlier, if the SEC gets the 20 teams where they get Clemson, Michigan, Ohio State, and Florida State, you have to go back to 2004 to have a national champion that would not be from the new SEC with the cheaters in Southern Cal.
That's pretty wild.
That's pretty crazy, right?
That is. And I think we all knew that sort of the power brokers are right here in the Southeast right now in college football and have been for a while. But that's pretty telling when you start to mix in Michigan's 97 championship and the Ohio State titles that they've had back in, 2014?
Exactly,
and whatever other year it was. I can't remember now. But that's kind of crazy. I think it was 2001, maybe.
2004 with Southern Cal. Yeah.
No. I'm talking about Ohio State's other title when they beat Miami. I think.
Yeah. 2001, I believe it was. Yeah, but still, it's just when you look at it from that perspective, if you want championship football, the SEC basically went out and got every champion for almost the past 2 decades, and they'll have them all in their conference.
I think Vince McMahon did this with wrestling at one point.
I was going to mention that where the territory days are kind of gone now. Anyway, Lawton Swan of Clemson Sports Talk. Catch him this afternoon from 4 to 6. It says Clemson Sports Talk on the marquee, but Gamecock fans love him. They're all in the closet about it, but they love them some Swanee. Swanee, thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you later.
Yes, sir.
All right, there you go. Walton Swan from Clemson Sports Talk. He kind of agrees with me that it's going to be in the mix eventually for you're going to have a lot of you're going to have a lot of what Vince McMahon did, where he went and basically sapped up the territories, got the best talent. Remember, Hulk Hogan was an AWA guy. People seem to forget that. But you know what? We're going to tell our kids, and not necessarily our kids, but maybe our grandkids, because Lawton and I are getting old. I mean, my daughter is almost 6 foot tall, brother. I'm serious. And it's like, we're going to have grandkids within the next, I don't know, a little bit. And when that happens, we're going to be telling them as we go to a game. I remember back in the days, we had this thing called the Pac-12. And you had all these teams from the California Conference that were out there. And they all played for the Pac-12 title. We also had the Big 12. And the kids are going to look at us like we're stupid. And they're going to say, oh, Grandpa doesn't know what he's talking about. He's lost his mind. There's no such thing as all that. And then they'll Google it on their phones. And they'll be like, wow, he was right about that. There was a team that had Reggie Bush on it who basically Southern Cal kind of cheated their way to a title. There were split national championships at one point. Georgia Tech shared a national title. Get out of here. That's the kind of thing that our grandkids are going to look at and be like, whatever, man. But it's true. We're all going to be sitting down as the old man in the sky yelling, I remember the Big 12. Y'all remember when Texas was 2-6 in the SEC this year? Remember when they were winning the Big 12 with Mac Brown? Yeah, Coach Brown was great. They've gone 2-6 for 5 straight years in conference. They haven't beaten LSU in forever. They're 0 for forever against LSU in conference play. And Alabama looks at them as a bye week every year. It's like getting up for Vanderbilt. Remember when they used to win the Big 12? That's what we're going to say. Seriously, that's going to happen. 803-978-1832. More of the rundown when we come back. This is Fox Sports Radio 1400. Man, you LSU fans don't forget anything. As far as knowledgeable fans, man, I got to give credit to a lot of the SEC folks, man. You guys know your stuff. A good portion of you do. There's some dummies, but the North Carolina fans are my favorite as far as being silly. I goof on you Georgia fans, but the majority of you understand good football. North Carolina fans, they are priceless. Oof. Follow an actual North Carolina fan on Twitter, Facebook, or whatever that actually follows the North Carolina football program. Wow. David with a good point here. Some of you are. I could get jacked up for a matchup with Texas and Texas A&M. That'd be good. This table tennis thing above my shoulder is just, I'm mesmerized by it. It's like mixed doubles for table tennis. Okay. All right then. This guy's wearing sunglasses, but they're upside down. The Olympics are insane. (803-978-1832). Final segment of the rundown this afternoon as we talk about the expansion in the college football playoff. We mentioned the Olympics. Are you watching the Olympics or do you just don't care? It's so weird to see the Olympics without anybody in the stands. It's kind of weird with all that. But I guess we're kind of used to it now. I tell you what, it's going to be almost like shock therapy. What I mean by that is that around, I'm going to say around the South, because I think up north, I think people are looking at it from a different perspective up north as far as the way that they're dealing with COVID-19 up north. I'm not mocking them, but that's just the way that they think. I think that it's going to be interesting as all get out when college football season starts. All right, out to the phones we go. Welcome into the rundown. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, my friend Rob Sanders.
What is up, my buddy? What can I do for you?
Not a whole bunch. So I know you've been probably heavy on conference realignment, but
Yeah.
I wanted to call and just rap with you for a second about your favorite team, the Packers. And it's not a gong show. You're going to get Rodgers back
Yeah.
for this season.
Yeah.
But him and Adams posted pictures today on their Instagrams from the Last Dance, indicating that this will be both of their last season in Green Bay. What do you think about that?
I think that the if you remember watching The Last Dance with Michael Jordan and all that, is like management was against them. I don't think the management is against Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. I just don't think that. I mean,
I don't think they are either.
I don't either, but it's like the other thing that Aaron Rodgers needs to understand. Yeah, you won the MVP last season, but you can't beat Father Time. Not everybody is Tom Brady, and he needs to understand that. And I think he got upset because the Packers went and drafted their quarterback of the future, and I think that's just one of those things where he should swallow that and go on. But I don't know, man. It's a disaster when it comes to all that.
Realistically, he's 37 years old now, right?
Yeah, he's 37.
So how old was Brett Favre when they drafted him?
I have to look back on that, but he was in his late 30s. So,
and if my memory serves me correct, I'm a Saints fan. I'm not a Packers fan.
Yeah.
Brett Favre kind of treated him indifferently, and that kind of affected him a little bit in the early part of his career.
Right.
Here you have this kid, Jordan Love. You're 37 years old. You're not going to play for forever. Right. I just don't understand why he sees it as a slight. Now, Devonta Adams, that's a different thing.
Devontae Adams wants more money, and I can understand that because in the NFL it stands for not for long, and you could get injured one season, and you've had all these great seasons at one point, and then all of a sudden, if you haven't gotten that contract, you're not getting paid. So I understand Devontae Adams, but with Aaron Rodgers, he's made more money than anything. I mean, money is not an issue with him. The guy owns a good portion of the Milwaukee Bucks. So, I mean, money is not a problem for him. He hasn't been right. I know people get mad at me when I say this. He hasn't been right since he got with Danica Patrick. And I know he's broke up with Danica Patrick and he went and married himself a teenager, and that's whatever you can do on that front. But Danica Patrick ruined Aaron Rodgers. And I firmly believe that. So I don't know how they're going to fix it, but strap in for if it is the last dance for the Packers, I think that's going to be great for them to have him back for one more season and then go from there.
So I can understand why Aaron Rodgers might post something like that. I don't get why Devonta would post something like that, because that's a guy that's in his receiving prime.
Right.
And if he goes, it's a contract year for him. So if he goes out and he does something similar to what he did, they're going to pay him. They're not going to take a chance. I mean, you're going to want to, if this is Aaron Rodgers' last season in Green Bay, Jordan Love is going to be the quarterback next year. They're going to want to make sure that he has somebody to throw the ball to. I can't imagine that they end up in a situation where they don't throw a bunch of money at Devonta Adams. And I don't see many other teams that could cap-wise
Right.
afford him. I mean, the Packers
Well,
have been historically
If you're
stingy
if
most of
I
the time at skill players.
if I were a member of the quote the press box fanboys for the Green Bay folks, I would say, hey, they drafted Jordan Love and they drafted Amari Rodgers, who has supposedly lit up things in camp there, and they're going to give him the opportunity to kind of fill that void there and hopefully develop him in the way that they developed Devontae Adams. I'm not saying Amari Rodgers is Devontae Adams, but I'm saying that that's maybe the way that they're thinking here. Hey, this is our backup plan. We're going to go with these two once you two, quote unquote, have your last dance here with the Packers. Either way, the Packers are going to be really, really good this season. And then after that, the questions are up in the air. But I mean, I was looking at their schedule. I think the Packers go 13-3 without sweating. I really, really do.
I don't think that there's much competition in the NFC North. I do think that, I mean, the Packers have shown that as an organization, they're pretty stable,
Right.
and they generally compete on a yearly basis. Even if this is the last dance for both of those guys, I just don't see the Packers going away and dropping off a cliff.
Well,
I think Packers fans are going to be okay.
The Packers, as a Packers fan, I'll tell you, the only competition in that division is the Bears. I mean, you've got the Lions, who are terrible. I mean, just terrible year after year after year. And, you know, the rest of the North there, you've got the Vikings. I know folks are like, the Vikings can do this, but it just always seems like the Vikings are short, in my opinion. So I do like Justin Fields going to Chicago. They finally got a quarterback. It's so funny when you stop and look at it. They could have drafted Deshaun Watson, and they drafted Mitch Trubisky. I mean, if you want to get fired, that's the way you get fired as a GM, is you miss on that, and then go from there.
Did.
But they missed horribly. Hey, man, I appreciate you calling the show, buddy. Thank you so much.
All right, Rob. I'll holler at you on Wednesday.
All right, buddy. There you go. Thanks to David for joining the program. I look at that mistake that was made there, and I tell you what, the good organizations don't make mistakes like that. Randall says 17-game schedule this year. You're right, sir. So Green Bay will go 13-4. Thank you for that, buddy. Appreciate that. Colby says the Atlanta Falcons drafted Brett Favre for a 4th-round pick. Typical Georgia sports. Oof. That's not nice. That's not nice at all. But you can make an argument, though, that the Detroit Lions made a good pick getting Matt Stafford out of Georgia. He, of course, comes in and throws the ball all over the field. It's just their defense was terrible. They couldn't put 2 and 2 together. The Chicago Bears, on the other hand, they've always had a pretty good defense year in and year out. They've had some good running backs. They've had a couple of good receivers. But as far as somebody back there turning the dials, they have been terrible. I mean, for a while. Remember Lovie Smith, the guy who turned into Santa Claus when he was up in Illinois? Remember him going to the Super Bowl and everything was, Rex Grossman's my quarterback. Rex Grossman's my quarterback. Yeah, I remember that. Never forget that. So, yeah, that's kind of looking forward to the NFL. The Carolina Panthers start their training camp in like 2 days. So we'll be jacked up with some previews on that too. More conference realignment, conference expansion, who's in, who's out, all kinds of good stuff like that with my buddy Lawton Swan. He is, of course, the czar of Clemson sports.
Stop looking at me, Swan.
Please call him up, tell him hello, as he does his show this afternoon, Clemson Sports Talk. Since he's in studio, I'm sure he'll be taking calls today. You can interact with him at 803-978-1832. He does like to sing show tunes. We've talked about that. He knows the entire set from Rent. Seriously. Call him up. He'll sing it to you live. I mean, he is that talented of a guy. We'll have some stuff for you tomorrow from some of the interviews that we did at ACC Kickoff. I wanted to devote today's show to the conference expansion, and Lord only knows what's going to happen overnight. Catch the podcast at 5 o'clock. I'll have that up. Follow the blog page at Fox Sports Radio 1400. I'll have any breaking information up there as quickly as I can. All right. Shout out to the folks watching online. We appreciate you. We'll be back tomorrow with the rundown right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. We'll see you later on.